At the turn of the 20th century, America was a land of limitless possibility. The skyline rose with steel and ambition, bold, daring, and unstoppable. Fueled by the American dream, small-town entrepreneurs built companies that reshaped industries and uplifted their communities. Innovation became the heartbeat of our nation. In 1912, local business leaders united with a shared purpose: to create a single voice dedicated to defending free enterprise, empowering businesses to serve people, provide solutions, and strengthen society. That voice became the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, committed to advancing economic freedom and opportunity for every American. For over a century, we've been a driving force at the crossroads of progress, shattering barriers, fueling growth, and creating opportunities for people building better lives. We don't just support business, we ignite it. From local startups to global enterprises, we create an environment where potential thrives, empowering communities, leaders, and creators to transform bold ideas into lasting impact. Working with and for a local, national, and global federation of partners, we fight for American businesses in the courts, in state capitals, in Washington, and on the world stage. Steadfast in our principles, unwavering in our resolve, uncompromising in doing what's right. This is America's story, written with vision, bound by conviction, illustrated through courage, and enriched by the hard work of everyday people, local business owners, and global visionaries who continue to define us. It's an enduring legacy of strength, determination, and shared ambition. One we proudly build upon as we work to write the next chapter of our nation's story. Join us. Together, let's build a future of growth and opportunity for the pursuit.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Thau, Editorial Director of Features for CO by U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm so pleased to be with you today for this next episode of From C-Suite to Main Street. First up, thank you to our sponsors, Dell, Oracle, and Square. We're so appreciative to have your partnership in this series. We are so lucky to welcome Adam Goldberg. He is the founder and the chief brand officer of Pop-Up Bagels. He's here to share the improbable success story of the Red Hot Bagel chain. What started as a pandemic-era bagel-making hobby from Adam's kitchen has amassed a rabid following among everyday consumers and foodies alike, and it's on its way to national expansion with plans for 150 more stores. He's here to share with us how he made that all happen. Delighted to have you here, Adam. Welcome.
Hi, Barbara.
Let's get started. So during the height of the pandemic, in 2020, you started making bagels for your buddies out of your Connecticut kitchen because you were bored. You were a quarantining flood mitigation executive and who'd never made a bagel before in his life. This is all true, right?
It's all true.
And it's like, fast forward 5 years later, and you are leading this foodie buzzy 11-store bagel chain, 150 employees. You have national expansion plan, about 150 stores in the next few years. There was a moment that when I just was doing some research on you that I'd love to just to zero in on, which was, if you can take us back to a pivotal moment, which seems like a pivotal moment to me, when one night, when you were giving them away from free, the bagels, you decided, let me throw up a website, and just so I could, pre-sell them.
Yeah, it started actually before the website. What happened was, I was originally making bagels for my close friends, and then my friends, and then I started getting these like kind of angry texts from tertiary friends who were like, "I don't understand. I met you at a party 8 months ago. How come you haven't made me bagels?" And I was like, well, that's aggressive. And I was spending a couple $100 a week making bagels for friends. So I kind of looked at it and I thought, you know what? My birthday's coming up on November 1st. I was like, why don't I do a fundraiser? That way, all these people who are angry I haven't made bagels for them yet, they can come, they can buy bagels for $20 a six pack, and we can raise money for hungry kids. So we raised $1,000. I had, 50 plus orders that day. And I wound up making 30 dozen bagels in my kitchen, which was the most I'd ever even close to attempted to make at any given time. And, it was only a couple days later that some food blogger wrote, best bagel in Connecticut is out of this guy's kitchen. And, a few chefs, local chef in Westport, called me and said, I don't understand why you're giving these away. You should sell them. Let's cook them in my kitchen at one of our restaurants and let's see if anyone buys them. So that was the original precipice of, okay, now you're really onto something here, because not only are your friends enjoying them, but people are angry they're not getting them.
Anger is a good indication of demand, right? And
Yeah.
so just so I understand, when you that was when you threw up the website, and then the next and you to pre-sell them,
Yep.
and then the
So
next day you were sold out.
we were sold out like 5 minutes later.
Oh my God.
And
So
after that first sale, we were sold out within seconds pretty much every time.
so tell me about how because that was seems like a turning point, if that's fair to say. How did you unlock what was it? What's important to say about that in terms of how you ended up unlocking success and scaling this business?
Well, I think from the beginning, the most important part for me was to whatever I did, I wanted it to be profitable. And not in a greedy way, but in a, "Hey, if I'm gonna sell bagels, I need to make sure I'm making a few bucks." Like, I wanna make sure that, the product I'm selling can be sold for a certain price, which is still a great value for the customer, but also profitable for me. So as I went from 1 sale to 5 sales a week to, having our first semi-permanent location just 4 or 5 months later where we were cooking every weekend, I made it so that no matter what, at the end of the day, I was not losing money trying to grow a business. I was actually making money as I grew a business, which allowed me to continue to grow the business. And everything I made was pumped right back into it. But very often I find entrepreneurs who think, hey, I can lose money until we get there. And I didn't look at it that way. I said, I'm only going to grow this if I'm not losing money, if I'm just making enough to cover our growth, um, and make sure that the people who are helping and working with me also get paid. That's important.
So it was essentially profitable from the beginning,
Day
eh,
one.
wh- which is such an important takeaway, and it was profitable even when you started to pay employees.
Yep.
I wanted to just to pivot to this
And that,
idea.
Barbara, that's actually
Yeah,
also a great point. Originally, it was
yeah,
myself and some close friends cooking in the
yeah.
kitchen, and getting in at 4 o'clock in the morning and turning on the radio and just jamming out to some tunes and making bagels. Um, and then my first employee was, I believe at the time he was a junior in high school. And I wound up paying him I needed help. I couldn't do it all on my own. And he, as a junior in high school, was showing up at, 4 o'clock in the morning to help me make dough and everything else. So it was important that he got paid and that everyone got paid
And this from the get-go.
from the
And
get go.
that's such an important takeaway because the profitability is so it's almost like an afterthought, and we see what happens to so many of these startups that don't think in those terms, right?
Yeah.
This whole idea, so your your business has a really contrarian streak running through it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like bagels, I was just thinking about this. You refuse to make sandwiches. Um, and you the customers, okay, no, I have to just, because I had to take one for the team. So customers, here's one of your bagels. Can you see the bagel?
Yeah.
Grip,
Beautiful.
right? Grip, grip, rip, and dip into
Yeah.
these. And so, which is really disrupting how people eat bagels. So I want to understand how you know, leverage that differentiation to break into the US. That's a what is it, a $3 billion US bagel market.
Yeah.
And you, how you leverage that differentiation to
So
become this viral hit with staying power. I know you don't like the word viral, but
yeah,
because how you did it, how you
it's
differentiated and broke
you know,
in.
the origin of the grip, rip, and dip is actually interesting, and it goes back to negotiating my first lease when I said I didn't want to lose money if I was going to be in this business. So rather than actually leasing a space or paying promising a rent for X amount of months, I made a deal with our first partners from a space perspective that said, listen, I'm going to sell the bagels and you've got a great commissary and a great chef working here. What if you made the cream cheese and we sold the bagels? And that way I make money selling bagels, you make money selling cream cheese, and everyone's happy. So when I sold a dozen bagels, and the origin of our business was that you could only buy them by the dozen. So it was a dozen bagels and two cream cheeses for $38 was the first price 5 years ago. And that meant that my real estate partner at the time was getting, you know, 12 or $13, I forget what the number was, for the cream cheese they were selling. So when people were getting our bagels, they were just simply getting a bag of hot bagels, a dozen of them, and two cream cheeses. That was it. And what happened was we noticed people were like leaving the door. They drove up and in the kitchen we were at, and we just walked out to the car and we would hand them their order. And we noticed they would drive over like 20 feet later, they would pull over and we would look up and everyone was just sitting in their cars, kind of ripping open a hot bagel and they were dipping them in the cream cheese. And we were like, wow, like this is amazing. And it was like, we always joke that whenever anyone got home, they always said, honey, they only gave me 10 bagels today. They must have miscounted because two of the bagels were definitely being eaten on the way home. So that's where we kind of noticed that like enjoyment. And when we opened our first store in Manhattan, it was the first time we were going to offer less than a dozen bagels and two cream cheeses because our customer in Manhattan isn't necessarily a family of four. It could be a student in college or high school, or, maybe just two people that live together. And we wanted to give it something that was special, but at the same time, we didn't really want to break into the same model that everyone else in the bagel industry is in, which is making sandwiches and sandwiches and sandwiches. And, the labor cost alone there is too high to have people slicing bagels and, smearing them. And then you worry about waste. So we came up with this 3 bagel grip, rip, and dip bag, which kind of allowed people to take their bagels and still go to the park with it and enjoy it without having to like go home and find a cutting knife. Um, so what we really did was we shared the enthusiasm that people had from getting a hot dozen bagels. And we shared that method with people who were maybe only getting 3 bagels, but they were hot or fresh from the oven. And it was a great way to eat it. And people just really took on to it. We've actually gone and trademarked grip, rip, and dip. And, we've, you know, so many people will say to me, oh, you must be offended I'm making a bagel sandwich. And the truth is no, like,
Right.
we love bagel sandwiches and we think you should make them if that's what you want to do. But we want you to be able to enjoy our product wherever you are, whenever you are, at the
Yeah.
moment. And
You're
we think peak freshness is the ultimate time to enjoy a bagel.
But, what's interesting is what you're saying is you're speaking, you're kind of changing consumer behavior. And sometimes people like, this is sort of like a business lesson that we've seen elsewhere, that people are doing things that they didn't know they needed to do. And now
Yeah.
therein lies some of the disruption. You've tapped into, um, some kind of some foodie food culture. Who's your target audience? If you had to talk about who they are. And
In the world of bagels, our target audience is pretty much, you know, all of the consumers who eat, carbs. I mean, that's our ultimate audience is that, 60 some odd percent of Americans eat 2 bagels a week. So that's kind of a remarkable number. And then when you're talking about actually, who do we see that's kind of helped our growth? It's definitely the TikTok crowd and the Instagram crowd. Um, they're just they have so much fun with it, and we love to see it. And we have so much fun with the people who post our bagels and who, love to show the grip, rip, and dip, or the ripping open of a bagel, or the smearing, in the park. And look, I'm dipping in 3 different things. We just have so much fun with it. So I, we make our bagels for everyone, but there's definitely that growth of, the mid 20-year-olds who just absolutely love to be on social media and, smearing and dipping and eating, and it's wild. I mean, there's such a massive subculture of people who love food accounts on social media at all ages.
Absolutely, and it's so much you're really tapping into that, and you feel it in your stores. Like, I went to the Penn Station store last night, and you have, like, a really fun wall of people, of photos of all your customers. It was all about the customers and all their accounts and all this viral excitement, and it's experiential, curious about, just how you did it, because I have to say this just a very unusual, sort of a improbable success story, but yet you seem to have had these instincts to make good decisions. But I wanted to zero in on, you know, two decisions you made as a first-time founder that were really critical to your, that catalyzed Pop-Up Bagels growth that all businesses can take away from. Does something come to mind?
Well, I think I mean, the first one we mentioned, so I'll come up with 2 more, but the most important
You
thing
mean the
is
profitability thing? Yeah,
profitability, and
totally.
and and
Yeah.
it's and again, it's just so important that when you're growing a business, especially in the food space, if you can't make money at small scale, you're never gonna make it at large scale. So you really need to build into something that, you know, can be profitable. I think another key thing is knowing what you're great at and knowing what maybe others are great at and bringing them on. I built an amazing team around me, with me, not just to support me, but also to lead me. I mean, there are people who, Doug Troy joined us 3 years ago. And he's since the late 80s has been building out bagel stores and dough manufacturing facilities. And, he's been such a critical part of this business. And looking back, I could see a young entrepreneur saying, no, we're going to do it my way, and there's no way to see it. I can say, like, when you look at opening 4 stores or 5 stores, it sounds easy to have 5 stores. But what you don't understand are the logistics of everything, not just delivering the food to the stores, but how about receiving the food? Receiving the orders and creating contracts with all the different suppliers, and there's so much depth there that, my specialty, what I've always been great at is I've always been great at, like, creating a mood and creating an environment, and keeping people excited for what they're doing, whether it's bagels, whether it was flood mitigation, or whether it's throwing, my wife's 30th birthday party or just a barbecue on a Saturday. Like, for me, I look at the details of where should the food be? Where should the bar be? How should this all be in relation to the tables, to the exit, to the bathroom? Like, I
Atmosphere. Yeah.
Atmosphere,
Yeah.
atmosphere,
Fun.
atmosphere.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
real estate, it's location, location. In, whether it's food service or retail or even just flat out entertaining, it's atmosphere, atmosphere. Hey, that music's too loud, too soft. That's how I've lived my
Totally.
life, since I can remember 12, 13 years old. I mean, I've always done that. I did it through
Love
college.
it.
I've done it since college. Um, so, although it didn't seem like a natural fit for me to create this business, the fact that I was able to use the bagel as kind of the centerpiece of the show, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, this I've been doing my whole life is, creating this great warm feeling of getting something and loving it, whether you're here or taking it with you.
And also that so important that you were humble enough to say, you know what, I can leverage institutional knowledge, right? You did it with with Tony, the bagel expert guy, as well as, I think, you brought in a branding
Doug,
expert.
Doug.
Doug, sorry.
I
No,
yes, before
Tony is your new CEO, right? Or Tori,
Tori.
who is from Moe's,
Who
who's helping with the
Yeah,
franchising.
which
So
another
it's
great example of,
another
when we
example.
realized our growth path was gonna be in the franchise world, I have no experience in franchising. And, Tori's been with us for, quite a few months now, and he's got great experience in franchising, and he's been amazing to work with. And now I guess one day I can say I have experience in franchising, but my experience tells me I like having others involved because
Absolutely.
it's tricky. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of great people out there, and people who are incredibly experienced with operating restaurants, and they're incredibly experienced in their markets. And it's, again, goes back to, it's one thing if you have one partner, but when you have 15 or 16 different partners all calling at the same time, you want to make sure that you can get them what they need, with the right people and the right attitude.
And it's so a takeaway would be for any business when you where you can leverage, tap into institutional knowledge from the people who have it in different
Yeah,
areas. Yeah.
whether it's institutional knowledge, I mean, it could be local
Experience.
knowledge,
Yeah.
experience. I
Yeah.
would say experience
Experience.
more than institutional.
Okay.
Um,
That's
just because I don't necessarily think you need to go corporate so fast. But you
yes. Yeah.
definitely want to have the experience of, opening a restaurant. If you're opening a restaurant, you want
That's all
someone
I
that's done it
mean.
before.
Industry experience, industry
Yeah.
expertise, however that looks.
Yep.
I love that you are a flood management executive, and in terms of, I'm always curious about because and I say this all the time. Sorry for people who've heard it. We are some of our experiences, and we're not siloed, right? And I guess I remember hearing you on a show, and you said with a lot of heart, you said something about I was helping people suffering from floods in was it New York and Connecticut or in your mind?
All over the country.
All over the country. And then you said, and maybe I'm just making connecting the dots and you could correct me. You said we make bagels with love. I don't know why to me it felt like the similar that there's some unifying thread. I guess my question is how did your work as a flood management executive inform this business's success if you see it at all that way?
Yeah, I mean, in the flood mitigation business, and we weren't helping people with their floods, we were preventing them from being flooded. And
Okay,
the business I was in,
mitigation.
last year, Tampa General Hospital had faced 2 hurricanes in a month, and they successfully used the system that I had designed for them with the Aquafence team, twice in a month. And it was all over national media, and it was really incredible to see. And I was so fortunate that I was a part of that project. Um, you know, but I think the important thing is in the flood mitigation space, it wasn't about selling them a product. It was about showing them how they can get a product, right? So the difference is selling it is, hey, Barbara, you should buy this because it looks good and it'll protect you. And that's a salesman. Showing someone how to buy something is, hey, Barbara, check it out. There's government incentives that I can show you if you're able to use these, and you'll be able to talk to your insurance company, and your insurance company will be able to chip in and help you out. Or, hey, you'd be able to use this resource in your neighborhood to deploy these. That's showing people how they can get something. So from the bagel things, we're not saying, hey, buy our bagels, buy our bagels. We're really saying, hey, we want you to enjoy your day. Like, here's a great way to enjoy it. Here's a great way to start your morning. Like, here's a great way to do it. And we're making it easy for you because we're baking them fresh for you. And in the beginning, it was no one had ever even heard of that. Like, what do you mean? I show up at 9 o'clock and my bagels are just out of the oven. You're making them specifically for me. I was like, yes, that's what we're doing. So it's kinda how and when we talk about the love, I get the question all the time, and, is it the water in New York that makes your bagels great or that makes bagels great? And I say, "No, it's the love." And by the love, I say it's, the care of what we do, how we make the bagel, the ingredients we put in the bagel. So much food out there has dough fillers and pasteurized or preservatives and things that just aren't great for the flavor, and they're not great for your body. We're a straight up flour, water, sugar, salt, yeast. That's it. Nothing else goes in our bagel. Some people say, maybe the bagel gets stale after a couple days. That's fine. We're making them to be eaten fresh.
Fresh, yes.
Yeah.
No, you cannot underestimate what cooking with love does. I mean, it's a love industry.
And by the way, also
Yeah,
all of now that we have actually 12 stores, we
12.
opened one
Sorry,
since you got
said
our
11.
number. That's okay.
Yeah, okay,
We've got
good to
more
know.
opening pretty much every month. Starting in July, we'll have at least one or two stores opening a month.
Yeah.
Um, One of the important things is we also make our bagel chefs who run the stores, we make them a part of the business. So, they're not just hourly employees and, they're a part of the business. They have pride in the stores that they run. And they're compensated based on how their stores do. And it's really important. It's also important that they're able to have, a life, out of work. And in our business, because we're in the bagel business, our stores are closed by 4 o'clock. So we have, we've built this family of bagel chefs and employees and whether it's executive employees or in-store employees that really love working with us because we have that attitude of, yeah, we're here to give everyone a great experience and we also want you to have a great experience as well.
It sort of speaks to the, servant leadership and also disruption, but not only disruption in terms of the model and your bagel business model, but also how you're, how you're treating employees. And, in the whole fast casual biz space, you're doing something different in terms of how you're thinking of your employees. Um, I'd love to know a little bit about you in terms of, inspiration. It's such a could be a little bit of a cliche word, but I think it's an important word. What inspires you? What do you I don't care what it is. It could be gardening, film. It sounds like you have a music thing going on because I think you were playing the guitar in a TikTok or something with the
Yeah,
guitar.
I play guitar and piano. I like to sing sometimes.
There
Um,
you go.
I
And
I and
how it feeds the
early
business.
on, I
Yeah.
used to do name that tunes, and someone would win a dozen bagels. I mean, I kept it fun and authentic.
Yeah.
I also curate all the music in our stores
Yes, the
to
music
make
was
sure that the
great.
vibe is right.
Yeah.
You know what really inspires me is I really love to see great operations at work. Um, and whether that's a restaurant or a club or, you know, anywhere I'm out, whether it's shopping in a retail store or just, walking through and seeing even like a food stand on the side of the road. Like, I love to see a great operation. I love to see efficiency. I'm inspired by design. Um, you know, uh, Funny story is years ago, I don't know if you know the chain Bar Taco. They have restaurants. They were actually originally started in Connecticut.
No. Uh-huh, I
Um,
don't know it.
anyway, they have this great vibe that the founders set up, and their furniture is like all made of like 2x4s and 1x6s, painted white, and really like boho chic beach furniture, but that you dine in. And I remember sitting there one day going, it'd be so cool if I had this at my house. Like, I'd like this outdoor kind of, furniture vibe. And I actually wound up taking some pictures and I wound up building it myself just because I was so inspired by what they designed there. And when I told someone at the restaurant that I was, building the furniture myself, he said, "Do yourself a favor and just, make it a couple inches higher than we have it, because these are designed to only sit for like an hour." You
Oh,
know?
right, 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 that's a good tip. But taking inspiration from all different places, right?
Yeah,
And that's also part of you're an atmosphere, you're very sensitive to atmosphere in a good way. Music, the design.
yeah.
Is there something what's a struggle that's informed your success?
I mean, a struggle that's built the success, like, what have I overcome that
Yeah, according however you wanna answer that, however you think about it, or it could have been a struggle related to this business or just
I
something
think
how it
honestly just struggling to keep up with the business,
Yeah, yeah.
really just continued to motivate me. There were times it was, asleep at 4 o'clock every night, up at 3 a.m.,
Well,
driving 12 hours in a day to make sure that certain people get bagels or certain towns, we do a pop-up and we got to get back. There was definitely that 2 year struggle that, it was hard. It was difficult. And also like learning to trust the system is also very difficult when you're growing a business, right? Like when we opened our store on Thompson Street, you know, I felt like I needed to be there 5 days a week, or if I wasn't there, I needed to call and make sure the person who's supposed to be there shows up. And not that they weren't reliable, they were. It's just I had never operated something where it was now in someone else's hands, right? And that's difficult to hand over control and trust that the people are going to be there. And once you do, it's really amazing. Um, because everyone we have on our team is super special, and it's just great that like, yeah, they want to do that too, right? So it's okay, Adam. You can go back to sleep. Like, the person who's supposed to show up at 5 a.m. is there at 5 a.m.
Uh,
So I think that was probably a struggle for me, and now you know, first they say you don't go in every day, then they say you don't check the tapes every day, and now they say, oh, how to do last week. And that's the best. And it's not a lack of caring. I'm
no,
constantly
it's
focusing on
yeah,
100 different things.
of
It's the
course.
ability to just know that your team has you, and that they've got our community taken care of for their bagel needs and for what we're doing.
And then when they know that you trust them, they bring something else because they feel freer, right?
Correct.
I'm curious about a nugget in our final minutes, even though we can keep talking. And by the way, I'm a native New Yorker and we're bagel snobs. The bagels are really good. So I
Thank
just
you.
want to say that. Um, uh, wanted to get a piece of advice that maybe you picked up along the way, some philosophy of thinking that was instrumental to the success of this business, or maybe something you've come to on your own that our small business audience could benefit from,
Piece of advice. Well,
or a nugget, or
a
even
nugget.
a nugget, a mindset,
Does this nugget have caviar on it, or is it just a regular
oh,
nugget?
that sounds good. Maybe that's your next schmear.
We're working on a caviar schmear, actually,
Oh
right?
my God, I'm
Literally,
so
as you and I are talking, on
stop
the other
it.
side of this camera is a
Get
full
out.
caviar and bagel spread.
Stop
We'll be
it.
at the Aspen Food and Wine Festival this year, doing a Sunday recovery brunch with one of the great caviar brands out there.
Oh, how fun.
But I'm not able to eat it because it's been sitting out for a photo shoot for
Yeah,
2
don't eat it.
hours. Don't eat it. A nugget of advice, again, I would just say, don't copy people, right? It's so easy to copy what others are doing around you, what's working for others. And you really just have to build what you think is right. And, people have said this, when we talked about, like, how did the rip and dip come about? Like, we didn't like set out to like say, what can we do that's different? We realized it was happening. And that's where we capitalized on, hey, this is actually really cool. Let's keep doing it. So sometimes you just got to be out there, and you got to be, building your business and growing things, and the great stuff will come upon you. Be aware of it when it happens, because when it happens, it's a special thing.
I think that's really important. Be
Because we didn't set
alert.
out to be different,
Oh,
other than the fact that
yes.
we were just selling hot bagels. Like, we weren't trying to do anything. We just wanted fresh bagels. That was it.
But you were alert to a consumer behavior, and then you went with it, right?
Yeah.
Be aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been
And,
delightful.
and
And well, you were
Barbara,
going to say something else.
one
Yes,
other
go
thing
keep
on that,
going.
I just also want to say, like, don't sacrifice quality when you're growing your
Mm.
business. If you start a business with a high quality product, maintain it. Because, very often people start with a high quality product, and then when they go and they try and grow their business, all of a sudden the quality suffers. And I'm
Oh,
so adamant that, like, I'm not opening more stores unless we can have the same product at every store every time. And we probably could have grown faster, but I don't think we would have been able to keep the quality, not only in our baking process, but also in the ingredients that we use. So I think that's super important for anyone growing.
I think that's incredibly important. And also, if you don't have consistency in the food business or in the restaurant business, you might as
Yeah.
well just get out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, we ran out of time, but this has been a lot of fun. And thank you
Super
so
fun.
much.
Of course.
And I hope to meet you in person someday. And I'm gonna go have a bagel when we're done. But it's delicious, I have to
Only
say.
one?
Oh, well, I'm trying. Last night I picked it up. It was terrible. Oh, it was terrible. I had no
So
control.
if this is a day-old bagel, run it under water, get it wet.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And then put it right on the oven rack for about
That
6
is my
minutes.
mother's trick. That is my mother's
Yeah.
trick. Thank you so much,
Of
Adam. I hope
course. Thank
to
you.
have a great weekend
You
and all
too.
the best to you. So thanks again to our sponsors, Dell, Oracle, and Square. And a reminder to join us in August for our next episode of C-Suite to Main Street with our guest, Gail Becker, who is the founder of Power. That's the hit startup food brand. You'll find a link in your post-event email to register, so please look out for that. And a thank you for joining us today. It's been a delight being with you. Bye bye.